Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Sports Tech All Stars podcast. We're kicking off our series focusing on broadcast innovation. The reason for this is simple: there is so much disruption happening in the broadcast space in sports, whether it is from big tech, the likes of Apple and Amazon and Netflix and Google and Meta, everybody fighting for the rights to broadcast live sports, to various live sports rights holders experimenting with their own DTC, direct to consumer streaming platforms, or it's the incumbents. It's not like the likes of Sky and BT and NBC and all these guys are sitting back quietly. They want to get in on the action and see what the future of sports broadcasting looks like. So that's our focus for this month. And we're kicking off that series with a conversation with Rob Koenen. He is the co founder and chief business officer of Tiledmedia. Tiledmedia is a Dutch company based in Rotterdam, where they essentially provide multi-view. Think of it as multiple screens on your one screen, which you can interact with and choose your own broadcasting view. Rather than hear from me, let's hear from Rob, which was a fascinating conversation around some of the technical aspects of broadcasting and the evolution of tile media, and especially a look at what the future looks like. Take a listen.
This is the Sports Tech All-Stars podcast, showcasing outstanding startups and initiatives in the global sports tech ecosystem. From Sports Tech X, the leading source for data and insights about sports tech, here is your host, Ron Malhotra.
Hi, Rob. Always want to know about the origin story. So tell me about Tile Media. How did you get here?
So it all starts with the VR hype in 2016, 2017. Me and three other co-founders, we worked for a Dutch research organization called TNO, and we'd been researching this thing called tiled streaming. And it was the perfect application for doing viewport adaptive VR streaming, which means in VR you only stream what you see and not the other 80% of the pixels that are not in your viewport. In 2016, VR was big. At least the expectations were huge, and we tried it out at IBC together with Harmonic. We did a demo at IBC. We had amazing responses, so we showed viewport adaptive streaming, and we decided to start our own company.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. And what exactly is the company? What problem do you solve, and how do you solve it?
We've, like any good startup, we've gone through a couple of transitions. We started out solving the VR streaming problem, and we still do, by the way. But VR hasn't grown nearly as fast as everybody had hoped. Certainly not met the expectations of 2016, 17. So we diversified into multiview streaming, which is with using the very same tiled streaming technology. Maybe you can explain a little bit about that later. And more, we're also starting to understand that because we built our own player from the ground up, we have great advantages even for basic streaming. So we're moving a little bit from a very dedicated niche VR streaming player, and we've done amazing things in VR, to offering multiview, to offering the best basic playback.
So let's come now to exactly what you described, this multi-view thing.
Yeah.
This is how I came across Tiled Media, also, I guess, where the name comes from, right?
Yeah.
And I'll leave it to you to explain what exactly it is, but a little background on why I reached out to you, because I found the solution interesting. I was doing my own research on broadcasting innovation. We talk about this a lot in our content, and every talk I give, including the one yesterday, how broadcasting innovation is a big part of the future,
Yeah.
as big tech is investing in broadcasting,
Yeah.
as rights holders are experimenting with direct to consumer applications and going building their own streaming platforms in some cases or through a partner, or the incumbents, the Skies and BTs and NBC Universals, and they're also have to continue to innovate. So there's a lot of action in this space, so which is why broadcasting tech is super interesting, which is why we're focusing a month of content on this topic. So while I was doing that research, I came across your application or your platform, and it sounds fairly simple, but it works so well, and it's so intuitive in how it interacts. And what I mean by that is how the tiled views interact. So now, please explain to me what exactly is multi-view, and what exactly, let's say, the origin of how tiled media, specifically this use case, came about.
Yeah, interesting that you should mention BT, Sky, and NBC Universal as the last three names because we worked with all of them
There
doing
you
VR. Maybe I can tell a little bit about VR later. But anyway, tiled streaming is a way of how shall I put this simply? So it's a shame this is an audio only podcast because the best way
No, no,
to
no.
show
We
it.
have videos. We're gonna insert clips, but essentially it's like what you used to call back in the day picture in picture, right?
Yeah.
So there's the main
So with,
screen.
yes, what we can do is basically multi-view, and if you do multi-view now with Apple or with Google, which have started to support it, you think of a grid, and it's very rigid and inflexible. We can basically do any number of feeds on a single screen, and the secret is for people that understand video coding, we merge the bit streams into a single bit stream. We retrieve all the bit streams at the size that they're all the feeds at the size that they're on the screen, basically. And then we run them through a single hardware decoder, which means it works on all devices. There's no limit of four. We completely control the buffer sizes, the bit rates at which each of the stream comes in, which means it is for the user. It's very flexible. It's instant. The switching is instant. It's very efficient because it doesn't require any cloud processing, and it's very scalable in that way.
Okay. Okay. So essentially, this multi-view, which I can customize, I can swap what I want on my main screen, what I want on the small screen. I can have as many small screens as I want. I'm
Yeah.
sure there's a limit. Is there like a 9 grid limit, like for example, on a
No,
screen, or
no,
yeah,
no, no. No, it's good because I need to describe. So imagine there is a motor race or a car race or something.
yeah,
There's about, I don't know, 20, 25 uh,
I understand.
athletes, drivers. Imagine you have the director feed on your main screen. And then imagine you can drum up all the thumbnails for all of the individual drivers and riders which have these onboard cameras. And now you can see all of them, like all 25, however many there are. You can click on one of the thumbnails and it switches immediately to the from the director cut to the individual driver cam, and you can switch back immediately, and it's all in sync. But you can also do things like I drag a thumbnail into the window, and then it becomes a pip, and I can place it where I want, and I can drag another thumbnail into the window, and it's another pip. So I have the director view, and I have two of these onboard cameras. Is because the director is sometimes focused at the front of the race, but my favorite rider is the back of the race or somewhere halfway. I want to see what's going on, and I can switch between the two immediately, and I can switch back. And the good thing here is I never lose sight of the director cut.
Yeah.
I never lose sight of the story that the director tells because they tell amazing stories, but I also can add my own story for my own favorite driver. I hope that explains the user experience a little bit.
Yeah, perfectly. And I think we will insert some videos for anybody who's only listening to this. Check out the YouTube version of this podcast. Um, and I think you hit the nail on the head. Certainly, why I was interested in it from two perspectives. I think there is the personalization of broadcasting, which is super important,
Yes.
allowing the consumer, the fan, to understand what their own story is and how to what they like to view from. An analytics heavy broadcast to a betting heavy broadcast to, as you said, a driver or a athlete perspective broadcast, and they can go and interact with their own story. But at the same time, and which is why I prefer this rather than the um, push the rest red button and pick your view and all that, this tiled approach gives you the option to tap into the professional broadcast, because that's what the director is like. That's an expert storyteller.
Yeah, exactly.
And I don't want to suddenly think that I'm so good and I'm missing out on various other bits of action. And I think that's why the tile view and a seamless tile view can be a really powerful broadcasting tool. let's come to now all the names that you mentioned, that I mentioned, and then you also mentioned, which must be some of the success stories that you've had. How are you working with broadcasters to deliver this experience?
So what we deliver is we have a player, a very advanced player, which does all of these. It also still does VR if people want to use it, VR 360. And usually we work with broadcasters for VR. We will do the transcoding as well. For multiview, we enable their transcoding pipelines to become multiview enabled, and then they integrate their player into their application basically. So for take BT Sport, they integrated our player into the BT Sport app, and then people could choose for an advanced experience. Again, this was still VR. We will launch with a racing format, which I can't divulge who it is yet, but it's well known. And they're also integrating our player into their iOS app and their Android app and their web app and etc. etc. That's how we work
Fantastic.
with
So
them.
you're just kind of like a SaaS product that they buy and they stick onto their product,
It's
onto
more
their
like
broadcast.
they buy the player, a complete player SDK, but it's a complete
Okay,
audio-visual player. We also provide some SaaS services for encoding, but that's more relevant for VR than it will be for multi-view.
understood. Okay, cool. So we've set the context. Maybe some examples of some big sports events that people might have used your player on without
So far, the things what we've done publicly were all VR. So we did Sky Worlds, which was an amazing football experience. And it's interesting because it has the same concept of if you do VR, usually people put a VR camera next to a soccer pitch, and then you don't have any of that context. You're just watching around. It's an unfortunate position. But in this case, what we did is we put a VR camera. It was an 180 camera in a really good position, and we superimposed in a jumbotron, which people could move around, uh, just a director cut again. So they had the benefits of both the director cut, all the context, all the commentary, the score, and the time is inserted in the. Basically, it was the broadcast feed, and completely in sync. They could see a 180 view, an immersive view of the whole pitch, so you could see from corner flag to corner flag. So you have both the online, like the presence, the remote presence, and the television viewing. So it's almost the best of both worlds.
So, Rob, we've talked a lot about, let's say, the 2D version of this view, though you have mentioned VR a number of times. Clearly, that is a big part of your story as a company. So, two parts to this question. A, how much of a difference has the recent development in VR headwear, so from the Oculus side, or especially the Apple Vision Pro, how much of a difference has that made to your deployments and to your software application? Number one, and number two, how much closer do you think we to a mass adoption VR product? The reason I ask this is because, as you said, in 2016 or 2018, we've seen a lot of products out there, and it's just been hard for them to find a good consumer
Yep.
fit. And also, a $3,500 product is as good as it is with Apple Vision Pro. It's unlikely to find mass adoption. So, do you have more confidence of a timeline
Right.
now?
Yeah. No, I don't. it's it's easier to predict what
Yeah.
will happen than when. Uh, And back when we started in 16, 17, I also started this thing called the Virtual Reality Industry Forum. And we thought, okay, we just only, quote unquote, have to create this ecosystem of content and users and equipment, cameras, headsets, etc. I still think that's true, but I still think it will take a while. Apple's device is amazing. I have one. At the same time, I'm not using it a lot at this point, but they solved a lot of problems in the quality and also in the UI, which again is amazing. But it's basically it's a $3,500
Yeah.
proof of concept, a development device or a development kit, if you will. So they will have to come down for mass adoption to happen. And basically, where we sit with our technologies in the video space. VR is doing fine with games. That's what you see with Oculus. But to cross the gap to mass market, you need to offer an attractive video experience. And we've done some amazing things also with the games in Beijing in really high quality, even in the Quest. You don't particularly need an Apple Vision Pro yet to have really high quality, but there's still no mass market yet. So it will happen, and it will take more than, I think, longer than
Hopes, yeah.
anybody
And the
hopes.
first part, how has your product evolved as these new hardware solutions have come to the market?
Interestingly, basically, it hasn't, in the sense that the stuff we built now runs on the Vision Pro. It does the same magic, the viewport adaptive streaming. Um, I think our product has evolved in the sense that we have diversified away from VR because we've seen it will take more time to gain real traction. So we now solidly focus on multiview because if we do that, then we can go to all the mobile devices. And we started the company because we were in this research organization. We were building this great technology for tiled streaming, and we didn't see it get into the hands of people. So it was our objective and our goal was to have
Right.
people actually use it, just instead of just doing research. And now with VR, that happened to some extent, and now we want to see more people use the technology, and we think multi-view is a faster approach, is a better approach, has
I
a
would
much
agree.
larger
Last
market.
question on this topic. If you were a betting man, which company would you bet on to first get a mass market, mass adoption product? Is it Meta or Apple? At a good price point and actually a
Oh
viable
man,
mass product, mass consumption product.
I don't know. You know, the interesting thing is that I think is that Apple is keeping Meta honest in the sense that what Apple is doing is inspiring and is lighting the fire under Meta
Right.
to also improve. So it's good that there are two horses in the race now instead, because if it's a one horse race,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
an
Yeah. No,
easy
fair
bet,
enough.
right? But now it's a two horse race, so it's that's much
I'd
more
agree with that.
interesting.
I think, yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm no expert on VR, but just on looking at the adoption of consumer products, I think Apple will always set the benchmark for quality, and Meta will be the one who's fighting to get that quality down to a price that is affordable. And so, yeah, you might, as a consumer, you might take some sacrifices to get access at a viable price point. But then again, your our own personal ROI, what are you getting for that price? And then it's the ecosystem of like what the products and what am I
Yeah,
using it for, etc. Yeah, so interesting place to leave the VR conversation. Let's switch into the future of broadcasting. We mentioned this earlier
yeah,
about why broadcasting tech is so important, so relevant now. There are a few companies that we've spoken to. From your perspective, what are the innovations in broadcasting? I mean, apart from multiview, which you guys own pretty well, what are the areas of broadcasting that you think will really drive innovation and drive, let's say, the future of fan experience?
yeah. No, I think what you're seeing is that broadcasting is turning into streaming. You might still call it broadcasting. Technically, if really technically, broadcasting is just putting things over the air or maybe through coaxial cables, one to many. But a lot of content consumption and even mass content consumption, which is what broadcasting is about, is going to streaming. And then if you do streaming, it's much easier to do stuff that's personalized and individualized, which is also why I believe in multi-view. I mean, even if you see statistics and research on how people consume content, you will see that younger generations consume much more of their content on mobile phones, on their just on portable mobile devices, and older generations will still keep watching TV. But if you're on a phone, you don't just watch passively. You want to interact with the content. You want to be able to interact with your friends. You want to get stats. You want to see your own view. So I think it will become much more interactive, and it's already happening. And one of the reasons why, obviously, we're selling
Makes sense. Yeah,
multi-view.
I completely agree with that. I think the idea, and but I think you articulated it well. Like the idea of watching it on a mobile device, a device which you are so used to interacting with, versus a TV screen which is over there, you're not used to interacting with. Even
No, people have tried forever to do interactive TV,
Yeah,
and they've
yeah,
never
yeah.
really succeeded. But interaction is so
Exactly.
natural on your mobile device, and it's so hard and clumsy on a TV. So, but mobile
Yeah,
devices were
yeah,
born for
absolutely. So
interaction.
then driving what is that layer of interaction and layer of personalization will be a big part of the future.
Yeah.
Fantastic, Rob. Talking about the future, what's coming up for Tiled Media? What does the next 12, 18 months look like? Anything exciting that you can tell us about?
Well, we're getting this big customer deployed that I told you about, and then when it becomes public, we will have an amazing reference case. What just happened is that Amazon AWS enabled multiview encoding in Elemental,
Wow,
which is a big thing for us. So all the Elemental customers can now use multiview. And as I already alluded to, we're also focusing now on the basic video playback. It's so just to take a few steps back to solve the VR streaming problem, we do it in tiles. So you're in a sphere, in a 360 sphere. There's about 100 tiles, and we're streaming only the 20 that are in your field of view. But we have to be incredibly fast if you move your head to retrieving these new tiles. And we have to, you imagine all these tiles, if you have 20 tiles in your view, they have to be seamless. You don't want to see tiles, and you don't ever see tiles, by the way. And they have to be in perfect frame accurate sync. So we had so this goes to say that we had to build a player from the ground up, from the network stack to the video decoding stack to the presentation stack to manage all this. This is a really hard problem. But now that we've solved this really hard problem, we're finding, sometimes even to our own surprise, that it has all sorts of benefits for basic video playback, not just for multi-view streaming, but the fact that we control the entire stack means that we know all the errors that are happening. And if you take another player in the market, they will always build on Exoplayer or AV Player, and there's always underlying stuff. We don't have the underlying stuff. We know everything that's happening. So I think we're also moving towards basic video playback. So we came all the way from the complicated VR to the multi-view to the basic video playback. We just do everything still, but we'll be focusing more on just the advantages of our technology for just regular vanilla video
fantastic. I
playback.
mean, so it's almost like you started with the fancy stuff and you've gone to the foundations. Um, yeah, yeah,
Correct. Yeah, because we had to, and the foundations is a really good word because we had to rewrite all the foundations of this player in order to do the fancy stuff. And we still do the fancy stuff. If people want it, we still offer it, and we still do it today.
yeah, and
We
that's
still
the
have
joy of
customers.
innovation, no? Finding a new way to do the same thing and a better way to do the same thing, which allows
Yeah.
you to build more stuff on top of that, on top of those foundations. Great, Rob. Yeah, look forward to seeing everything that you do and all these big partnerships that you have coming up. Any call to action for any of our listeners? Are you raising a funding round? Are you looking for
Oh yeah.
partners? Are you looking for clients? And how do people best get in touch with you? LinkedIn, email?
We're always looking for clients and customers, obviously. Um, I think the best call to action is if you're interested in the multi-view stuff, you can download our player and play with it. It's in the public iOS App Store. It's in the public Google Play Store for Android. Just look for Tiled Media. It's one single word, and I'm sure you can provide some links in the notes to the podcast. But you can just play with the multi-view content. It's relatively boring content because we don't have much rights, but you can play with a 25 feet content item, and you can go completely overboard in dragging in pips and switching and stuff, and you can see
And
how
I
well
think
it
that'll be
works.
a cool thing for people to understand what's possible, even if, as you said, they don't have the rights. But
Yeah,
then it becomes a better use case for you to get maybe some end consumer to go and send a little email to their service provider and say, hey, maybe we can avail of this service. Yeah, so we'll drop some notes in
yeah.
we'll drop some links in the podcast notes, as you said, also maybe to your LinkedIn profile if somebody wants to reach out
Thank
to
you.
you. Rob, it has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for taking the time and talking to us about the future of broadcasting and especially what Tiled Media is doing. Before I let you go, my last question. It's my favorite one to ask. I like to believe we are sports fans first. So I want to know what has been
Yeah.
your favorite sporting moment.
Thank you, Ron. Well, if I show these, it shows my age. There's actually a few, but I think right now the Euros are going on, right? The Euro European Soccer Championship. So I think it's the goal that Marco van Basten scored in the final in 1988 against Russia in Germany, where it was just it
Yeah.
was an impossible goal, and it won the game. So this is the only time the Netherlands soccer team, which has been amazing, won a major prize. So let's hope for this
I
time.
mean,
Yeah, and then another one, if I may, is the Rotterdam Marathon, which is different, but it's just seeing thousands and thousands of people just have fun doing sports, running 42K. It's That's been an amazing experience. I picked up running myself during COVID, so I ran it for the first time in 2022. That's another thing that made a lasting
fantastic.
impression
As
on
a
me.
runner myself, I can completely understand that. And yeah, thank you for two great moments. One is an incredible goal, historic moment, and one is, let's say, feeling the community of sport and the great energy that that brings. Rob, it has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for taking the time. Right, that is another episode in the can in our Sports Tech All Star podcast series. We're focusing this month, as I mentioned at the top, on innovation and broadcasting. And there's some very cool stuff that Tiledmedia is doing, as he said, in the streaming space, but also in the future, maybe what VR will look like in sports. But more to come in the series. See you guys next week. Ciao.
Thanks for listening to the Sports Tech All Stars podcast with Rowan Malhotra. If you like our show, let us know and leave a review. And if you want to know more about us, check out sportstechx.com, where you can find our latest industry reports and updates. For a deeper dive into all things sports tech, check out our comprehensive database, Sports Tech DB, at sportstechdb.com. Don't forget to follow us on social media. You can find us at SportsTechX on Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook. Join us next time for another insightful conversation with a leader in sports tech.